Hey guys, welcome to Clockwork, Noodles for another breakdown of Spice and Wolf. This is the 2024 remake. We're on episode number 16. Welcome back to the channel, guys. I hope you're doing okay. I am still recovering from my illness, so I do probably sound a wee bit weird. There's also been a few software changes. The computer's different. So I do think the recording sounds weird at the moment because I have put one out currently on a new computer. So if it does sound weird, just bear with me as we're trying to get to grips with making things as smooth as possible for the transition. There's also only 18 days now till we move across to Japan, where things are going to be a little bit different as well. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and your continued support. It does mean a lot to me. This week's episode, I've got a few notes. I've also got a slight confession at the end of it. Bear with me as we get to it, and also just try and keep an open mind. I normally get negativity whenever I say anything that isn't quite on the glowing review. Not everything is a bad thing if it's not quite slightly glowing. I'll just explain myself right at the end. Let's get straight to it with the confession of love from Amriths, which kicks off the entirety of today's episode. I knew something was gonna happen like this because I already said that he was smitten head over heels for her and he was buying her things, and I even thought in my head that you just don't accept gifts from people unless you know why someone's buying it, or if you have any interest in maybe pursuing that avenue. I'm always very dubious when people present things to me. I'm like, well, what are you expecting in return? It seems like we've actually got a bit of a challenge on our hands now. Lawrence is the one who does actually agree to the duel as well. It's kind of on you as well for doing that because things later on appear bad. I don't know if I would have accepted the deal. And I know we have this big argument a bit later on about the idea of being a mature adult. What is right? What is wrong? What's the correct avenue of following? It's just an interesting one because Lawrence is so gung-ho on Hollow not accepting. So he's all confident about the fact that you can pay me, but she's not going to leave my side. It's quite a heated episode. 2 episodes into the next chunk, which this is normally when a new season would have aired. So it's interesting that things are kicking off as volatile as they are. The pacing is definitely speeding up. Hollow naturally does have her own free will. I don't know what it means if like Amriths does come up with the money. Hollow says, no, actually, I'm going to stay with Lawrence. Would Lawrence still get to keep the cash? I don't know how it works. Obviously, it's a bit of a crappy deal anyway. Amriths really believes that Hollow has undergone these severe hardships, and whether she's maybe laid it on a bit too thick, and it's now come across that Lawrence is awful and this is what's happened. And at the end of the day, she was told to say that by Lawrence, so there's no fault anywhere. It's quite a bad situation that we're now finding ourselves in, and things only really get worse. This is the episode where things really decide that they want to take a dive for the worst. Now things do start to kick off quite quickly when people start to make bets, and obviously I did wonder, are you allowed to technically bet on yourself? Because most of the time you're the one who could technically rig something. I believe in most situations you're not allowed to bet on something that you're involved in. I just have a feeling that might be a law. I don't actually make bets. I've never actually made a bet ever, so I don't know how they work. But I figured that something like this would be a bit of a grey area that you can't technically bet on yourself. Obviously, Lawrence believing he has the higher odds, which is great. But after this episode, that doesn't look so good. I guess at least he'll be money up, but it's just going to be in a very sticky situation in general. I do like the attention to detail when it comes to the festival. Now, this is where some of my highest praise for the episode comes in. The festival in general is one of the best I have seen when it comes to really making you feel like you're in a medieval setting. I love the attention to detail with the instruments. The instruments look great. I love the huge variety of different spectacles. We've got the food going on. People are selling things. Obviously, there's lots of traders, dealers in the ports. There's beautiful crafted wheat statues which are eventually battling, and there's like people dressed up in masks. A lot of this reminds me of the big one that happens down in Penzance. I can't remember the name of it. It normally happens around the same time, like the end of the summer, the festival kind of thing. I think it goes into the darker months when you get these deities coming out and they put on these spectacles, and I really like the attention to detail, like insane. It really does make you believe this is the period that I'm in. We also get a bit of a clarification later on in the episode too, which is something that I was also considering. When I mentioned the fact that the Christianity would borrow from paganism, a lot of the stories were changed, written over, re-recorded in a sense. We do get that clarification a bit later on from Lawrence, where he says some of these old stories are changed often enough after the king takes over, where they want to hide something or they want to change something. So stories will get changed quite a bit, which is why if you are ever studying the medieval period. It's sometimes very wise to take a huge dumping of salt whenever you look at any story because of the amount of change things go through. One of those annoying tasks you have to deal with when you are researching this time period. But it is a fascinating time period to research nonetheless. I've dabbled in it. When it comes to my thesis and stuff, I have dabbled in it. I really do enjoy this period, and it's nice to see everybody getting into the festival. Now, we do get an update on Amriths' financial situation, which is interesting, that he's actually made a lot of the wealth himself. Now, I am very impressed with Amriths, and I'm actually not angry at Amriths in the slightest. He's done nothing wrong. He's heard a story, he's fallen in love with someone, he doesn't want that person to be shackled, so he's done the right thing of going, I'm going to buy you out, I'm actually going to give you a solid relationship. The relationship bit feels a bit forced, but he's doing the right thing in the sense that he wants to free somebody from slavery, which I cannot fault him for. Also, the fact that he decides he doesn't want to use his status to make his own money. Absolute fair play to you. You are a young entrepreneur. I'm very impressed with how quickly he's actually amassing the mass. And the fact that he is going to have that cash at the end of it, and you know he's going to have that money. Very impressed with him. And he's quite the wheeler dealer. I even think in a sense that Lawrence is also very impressed with him in general. But we did get a tiny little hint even at the start that he might be using underhanded methods to make that money, despite the fact that he doesn't really play dirty, he doesn't really have people listening in or anything, which is nice of him. The hint initially was there that he was using other methods to get the money across. Now, initially when Hollow comes in and the letter first arrives, Hollow is sad and not sure about the fact that she might be the Hollow in the stories that we are told. I did kind of chalk this up to her essentially not wanting the story to come to an end. I don't doubt the fact that Yoitsu, the forest, is where she's initially from. So I don't doubt any of the story whatsoever. I just think that initially, when she hears about the letter going through and he says it's about where you're from, I do believe she's just probably popping in that uncertainty just because she doesn't want the story to come to an end. Now, the underhanded methods are the Pyite. The Pyite thing was mentioned in the first episode, but you also note in the first episode that Lawrence also is very impressed with it, and he's also kind of latching onto the idea of using it, but he just doesn't because obviously he ends up being distracted from it by everything that's going down in this episode. Amriths actually saw the profit first and got on it. Lawrence kind of beats himself up and says, I should have seen the deal. I know how big this was. I shouldn't have actually sleeping on this thing. We know that's not the case. He actually didn't miss out on it. He just got very busy and very distracted. Now, I am going to now make my little confession and say that I did not enjoy anything in the last half of the episode at all. I'm just not a fan of the forced conflict, lying about not being able to read as well. I don't know how I feel about it. And this is generally where people decide to give me the million downvotes. I don't like crapping all over an anime, especially an anime where I've had so much praise up until this point. I just did not like the whole pressuring and then having Hollow, I'm gonna go marry this person, he loves me, right? And her begging for him to sleep with her as well and have a kid and it'll be fine, I don't want to be on my own. I get it. She's an immortal being, and the idea of immortality coming up in a lot of the shows I've broken down, where to somebody who lives 1,000 years one day is actually nothing in comparison. And we've had that ongoing theme throughout the entire story about the idea of immortality to somebody living quite a long time that's a lot differently. I just didn't like the argument in the slightest. I didn't like the fact that the fight was there at all. I know it's there just to make you suddenly panic that she's not actually going to pick Lawrence. She's actually going to go with Amriths, or she's actually going to accept when the money comes through that I'm actually not going to stay with you, so Amriths wins. The whole deal shouldn't be there anyway. Lawrence should never have accepted it. The fabrication of the lies technically came from Lawrence, but he also did that to protect her. He said, if you're a nun, nobody's actually going to question it. This is the situation. Because I feel bad as well, because I always feel like Hollow's forcing Lawrence, and I don't like that. Obviously, that's probably a misunderstanding. It could be a misreading of the entire situation, but all I know is I didn't enjoy it. And normally when it comes to the show, I am slavering on the reviews. I'm raving about it. I love it to pieces. And it doesn't mean I'm going to stop. It doesn't mean I'm going to stop watching it. It just means I did not enjoy that decision made for the next arc, that bit of conflict that we're now going through, because it does feel forced. And it does at times feel like all that playing around, if you keep playing around, if you keep teasing somebody, they're not going to know if they're going to take you seriously or not. And then suddenly when you're pleading with them to do the deed or be with me, or like, I'm going to get lonely and I don't want to part from you. It's very hard to know when somebody's messing around and being serious, and then uncomfortable scenario to watch, and I didn't really enjoy it. And I get it, it's supposed to be there to cause the conflict, to make it uncertain. Is Hollow going to go with Lawrence at the end of it? Is there now this big question mark whether she's actually going to split, which I don't think she will. And we do know there's a kid at the end of it, which is probably their kid, but I don't want to believe that the kid was made just to keep her company and just so she would be not lonely years and years to come. So that is just my general thoughts. I understand that people don't like it when people say negative things about a show that they love, which is absolutely fair, but I have an opinion. I'm here making my opinion as somebody who's been breaking it down now for 16 episodes, and I've loved the show up until this point. I don't like the direction. If the direction stays on the way, it's probably going to be a case that when it does come to an end at 24, I won't pick up any more seasons afterwards. I'll see the season out because I've actually stuck to it and I've made a decision to stick to it, but I don't know if I'm going to like the direction if we do keep up the conflict, or it feels very forced. It feels like the conflict's come out of nowhere, it's erupted out of nowhere, it's escalated very, very quickly. Hollow, I don't understand why she would have lied about not being able to read and then suddenly being able to read. I don't know why she would have done that, but that also feels like kind of one of the things where she's quite tricksy anyway. Also, her blowing up like that as well, I don't know, I just feel like she had more of a calm head anyway when it does really, really erupt, and then suddenly it doesn't feel like it's the same Hollow reacting in the same way. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's because it's quite a sharp U-turn. The episode's going smoothly and then suddenly it's not going smoothly, and so we'll just have to see where it goes. So I apologize if my opinion doesn't line up with yours. It's not going to. Everyone's going to have their own opinion when watching a show. It's not here to make anybody upset or anything. It's just, these are my opinions. You guys tune in to see what I think. This is just how I think about this episode in general. So thank you guys so much. I hope you guys are looking after yourselves, and please take care of yourselves. And before you hit the downvote, just think about it. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.